So welcome to The Liquid Show. I'm Pete Crouch.
I'm Colin Gilchrist.
In this episode, we're joined by Emma-Jayne Gooch. Emma-Jayne has a very strong background in recruitment, took a position in Sellafield as the Chief of Staff to the CEO, and now runs her own organisation, Plain Purpose. Thanks for joining us, Emma-Jayne. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Delighted to be here.
Good. So, we want to understand a little bit more about your journey.
Okay.
What we do know is that you've held various positions in the world of recruitment.
Yep.
You've run your own business. As I mentioned in the intro, you had a senior position at Sellafield, but now you're back in self-employment, as it were, running your own organisation. So, Colin, I know you've got some background questions that we'd like to dive into.
Absolutely.
So let's do that.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, fair enough. Okay. Thanks, Pete. So, Emma-Jayne. Yeah. Doing some digging. Everyone sort of has a story of where they've come from and how they've got to where we are now.
Yeah.
In yours, it's fascinating. Do you want to share a little bit about that whole journey? And I mean, really starting early doors, school back. So I'm aware that your mum was young, that, right up to current day where you're looking after your two girls, but that story of you and who you've become because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's.
Yeah, no worries at all.
Yeah.
So my mum, as you mentioned, was very young, pregnant at 16.
Yeah.
Dad was 19. Still together. There is such
Amazing.
a thing as love
Brilliant.
and long marriage. I haven't yet found it, but and we were brought up, obviously, them being so young, in a council house.
Yeah.
We got moved onto a council house in a village.
Yeah.
And the thing we found was there was a lot of snobbery around the fact that the council house people, and there was about 6 council houses in the whole of the village,
Oh, wow.
were
Okay.
in their village.
Right.
So my mum was found it very important to make sure that we spoke properly and that, we weren't looked upon in any different way because of our behaviour or the way we spoke. Yeah. And this is really interesting because on moving to Cumbria, speaking well has actually gone against me.
Yeah.
Because people think that I'm stuck up, or I think I'm posh, or I think I'm above them because of the way I speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's such an interesting cycle to think you're taught to talk away to fit in because you are not at the regarded same level as someone else.
Yeah.
Yet then people who are at the same level as you or above then look down on you because they think that you're above the level they are. And it's just bonkers. This whole hierarchy of social being is just bonkers.
So at school then, I mean, the elocution came quite early or later on, or I mean, was it difficult making mates, or I mean?
No, not at all.
Right,
Not at all.
okay.
School was absolutely fine. It was a primary school in the village.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, kids don't pick up on that from their parents,
more
really.
the grown-ups.
Parents aren't going to say,
Yeah.
you can't play with that child because they're a council house kid. Or I never felt that. I never felt that.
Yeah.
One experience I did have, which you may have heard me speak about previously or read about when you were researching, was a real pivotal moment for me. And this is my nan, who was a huge inspiration to me.
Yes.
She worked as a cleaner in the toilets of a really popular tourist attraction called the Abbey Gardens in Bury St Edmunds.
Okay.
Yes.
And I used to go and play at the Abbey Gardens. It had a nice park and gardens and stuff. And then I'd go in and see Nan, and she'd be in there doing her knitting in between going and doing her cleaning and so forth.
Yeah.
And one day I was there with a friend, and I must have been probably about 10, 11, somewhere around there.
Okay.
I was playing with this girl, and I said to her, "Oh, shall we go and see my Nan?" And she went, "Oh, where's she?" I said, "Oh, she's just in the toilets." And she said to me, "What do you mean she's in the toilets?"
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, she works in the toilets." And she looked at me and she was like, "That's disgusting." And I suddenly went, "What?
Yeah.
But what? Your Nan, her job is cleaning the toilets." Now, obviously, this girl, in hindsight, her parents would have been like teachers or, doctors, directors, managers, as would have her grandparents. So she wouldn't have been around, I guess, working class people that do the essential jobs that people just take for granted.
Yeah.
So I was kind of really affected by that. And I went home and I thought about it, and I was just like, oh my God, am I really disgusting because
So what age were you at this time,
it was
Emma-Jayne?
about 10.
Oh, right.
9,
Yeah,
10,
so
11,
very
somewhere
young.
around
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
And I,
So it was quite hurtful.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that I was dirty, that
Yeah.
my nan was, that there was something not right about me
Mm.
because my nan worked in the toilets.
It's a very pivotal age.
Yeah. So I went and talked to Nan and I was like, Nan, I said, something happened. Can I talk to you about it? She's like, yeah, of course. So I said, look, and I told her the story and she went, Emma, it's people like us that give people like them somewhere to piss. And they'd be lost without us.
Yeah.
And you know, and she said to me, no one wants to be pissy pants. And it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
But, you know, at the end of the day, if you need the toilet, you want to...
And you want a clean toilet.
And it's essential.
Yeah, of course.
But
Yeah.
the way that that's perceived, and it was at that moment, and I know it was such a young age, but it was at that moment that I really got the belief that hierarchy is bullshit.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, it does not matter what you do for a job.
Yeah.
It does not matter if you're a director, managing director, CEO, if you're a middle manager, if you're a cleaner, if you're accounts assistant. It doesn't matter what your role is.
Yeah.
Everyone is integral to a business and everyone's integral to society.
Yeah.
And that to me was a real kind of, and again, it's not until you reflect that you go, and that was part of my personal purpose discovery that I did that made me kind of go, that was a key moment for me.
Okay. And then, so moving on from that, I mean, you moved away from Suffolk. Was that at what stage was that?
So went through education system, didn't go to university, had a place at university.
Yeah, do drama, was it?
Yeah, my ambition was always to be a drama teacher.
Right,
I wanted to be a drama teacher in English.
Yeah.
And I took a year out before I went to university and I went and worked on the holiday parks as an entertainer.
Yes, I remember this. This is exciting. Where was this?
Where?
Yeah.
So I worked for Haven.
Right, okay.
And I worked at Great Yarmouth.
Right.
I worked at Skegness. There was another one.
Stuck it out.
And Winchelsea. Yeah, so I did 3 seasons.
Right, yeah.
3 seasons.
So a bit like a Butlins red coat then.
Absolutely.
What do you get? What jacket do you get with Haven?
Oh, so it was a stripy one.
Okay.
It was a really strange environment actually as a first kind of, I mean, I'd been working since I was 12 on market stalls, paper rounds, babysitting, all that type of stuff, shops. So I'd always earned my own money.
Such a great grounding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, if I wanted stuff, mum and dad couldn't afford, you know, just to give you stuff. So you worked for it.
Yeah.
You know, it's what you did.
Yeah.
So I went to work on the holiday parks and it was a really exciting and strange experience because during the day you were like in your uniform tracksuits and stuff and you were running kids clubs and you were doing quizzes and all those things that you get at holiday parks during the day.
Of course.
And then in the evening you had to wear full makeup.
Okay.
You had to wear full makeup, you had to have red lipstick, you had to have your hair tied back, and it was really, really strict.
Yeah.
And then you'd be doing discos, you'd be running
the entertainment
bingo,
side of things,
and then you would be maybe in a show, you'd be doing singing, you'd be doing dancing, and it was really nice, but it was a real kind of like you wouldn't realise what a strict environment. But the weirdest thing was they would sell photos of you in the souvenir shop. And at the end of the week, people would come up to you and go, will you sign your picture?
Oh, wow.
And it was bonkers because you were like signing pictures. It was just really strange to think that people
So there's
were
thousands
buying...
of pictures of Emma-Jayne Gooch somewhere in the world with your signature on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There you go. You know, one day when I'm famous,
Let's
that'll be
find
worth a lot
them
of
on. Let's
money.
find them on eBay. Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah.
So then I decided not to go to university, carried on working on the holiday park, hence why I was there 3 seasons.
Yeah.
By that time, I was earning money. I had my own car to kind of give that up. And I would have had no financial backing from my parents. So it was more of a financial decision than anything else.
Yeah, I get that.
So I did a few jobs, then fell into recruitment. And we decided, so I had my first daughter. Then I had my second, and then we decided to, with my husband's job, move away to Wiltshire. And then not long after we'd been there, we got settled and so forth, I found out my husband was having an affair.
Oh.
And it was, and I mentioned this earlier, I thought you got married and you stayed with someone for life.
Yeah, same.
So I had very strong principles.
Yeah.
And it didn't, you know, for me, you get married and then you have children. That was my values.
Yeah.
So when I was pregnant and my wedding ring didn't fit, I've had to go and buy another wedding ring because I didn't want people to think I was an unmarried mother.
Yeah. Right.
Because I was that kind of and now it seems a bit silly looking back, but that they were my principles, my beliefs, and I'd never judge anyone else for being.
Yeah.
But that was what was important to me.
Yeah. And it was, I think, of the time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not that old.
Okay, I'm reflecting on my age. Sorry,
oh my
Jane.
God.
Yeah. All right.
So suddenly, so I found out he was having an affair, and my mum and dad had moved up to Cumbria.
Yes.
So we were all from Suffolk. My uncle moved up to Cumbria when I was 6.
Right.
And we used to come up here on holidays a lot.
So there was a link here.
So there was, so there was a link. And my mum was really close to my Uncle Danny. And my dad's health had been declining, and they couldn't, they owned their own house by now, which was great, but they couldn't really afford the mortgage just on mum's salary because houses down there were so expensive. So mum got a job up here. So it meant dad could kind of retire on medical reasons and moved up here. So they were close to my Uncle Danny. So they'd come up here.
Makes sense.
So they moved up here in the April. I found out my husband was having an affair on Father's Day, which was in June. And it was like, even now it feels, and it was so long ago, the emotion is still there. And the feeling in your gut when you read the messages that I read is just like, just absolutely.
So that was a fairly immediate decision then. You were like, right, well, I'm out of it.
I came up to Cumbria first of all, and I was here for a week, and he was on the phone, nothing. People aren't telling each other they love each other and so forth, unless something's, happening. I came back down for about 3 days, and then I found out he was still seeing her. So I then just fitted everything I could into I had a little, I think it was a Ford Fiesta, only one door would open. I put the 2 kids in there, everything I could fit, and just drove up to Cumbria. I didn't have any money. I had a joint account with my husband, and I was really naive, and I did not do any of the accounts and everything. I left that to him. So I didn't pay the bills. I didn't do any of that. He did all of that. And actually, we were in a financial pickle that I wasn't aware of.
Right.
So there was literally no money in the account. So I was kind of like, here. I had 2 kids. I had no job. I had nowhere to live. My heart had been shattered, and I just did not know what to do.
So who do you turn to? I mean, apart from mum and dad, I mean, it's like...
There was nobody. I was in an area where I knew nobody. Really interesting, and this is one thing that's so interesting about divorce, is that all the people that were our friends decided it was probably best not to speak to either of us because they didn't want to take sides.
I've been there twice.
Great.
So
good situation.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Oh, yeah, don't worry.
And so suddenly... you have no one. So I was on my own. My kids, my youngest was 22 months. My eldest was, she's 22 months older, so she wasn't even 4, so she was still 3.
Right, okay.
And I had no house, no job. I was broken. I'd stopped eating, and it was just horrific. And I remember I sat, and this going back to the age, going through the yellow pages, trying to find recruitment agencies that I could call. And I had to make a really hard decision, right? So I said to you a little while ago, I didn't want to be a mum that was a part-time mum. However, I had 2 choices. I had to either go to the council, say I was homeless and get benefits and be a stay-at-home mum, or I had to get a job and work full-time. And they both were decisions that shouldn't be judged.
No, absolutely.
But for me, I felt that I needed to be a role model for my girls. And I felt I needed to, be someone
feel your worth as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Feel valued.
And I didn't want to just be a mum. I knew I had more than that in me.
So in that situation, then there's a huge amount of motivation to literally pull yourself up from the bootstraps, as it were, and just crack on. Because otherwise, what's the option?
And that's it. When you're at the lowest you think you can be, you can't go any lower. So the only way is up, and you have to look for that positive. And you know, as you go through more of these experiences through life, which I have, it teaches you that when you're in a bad place, it's okay, because you know that it's going to give you such a good lesson and something amazing is going to come out of it. And I genuinely believe that.
So as you've gone through that trauma, because that's what it was, that's what it is. How much of that do you think has fed into your sort of professional career as a driven individual?
Loads, because it gives you resilience. It gives you determination. It gives you belief. You know, I genuinely believe that anyone can do anything that they want to do. I believe if you really work at it, if you get your eye on it, if you drive forward, have the right conversations, you can achieve it.
I think it comes back to that point of motivation, doesn't it? You've got to have something that just gives you a kick up the
Absolutely.
backside or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think it's sad when people aren't motivated.
Yeah.
You know, they maybe, for whatever reason, they don't have that motivation. Where, as you say, they're perfectly capable of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just haven't found the right
No.
motivation. So,
No.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So within the 2 weeks, I found myself a job, I found myself a house, and I had the girls in nursery.
Amazing.
I only managed to get myself a house for 2 reasons. One, because my wonderful nanny, who I spoke about, she lent me £1,000, and she didn't have a lot of self, but she lent me £1,000, which enabled me to put a deposit in a first month's rent down on a house.
Yeah.
Bless.
And the employers that I had left told the letting agent that I was still employed by them remotely,
Oh, for a
so that
background
I
check.
could,
Yeah, of course.
at least get that house.
Yeah.
So without those 2 pieces of help, I wouldn't have been able to get that. But it's what I managed to do in that time. So it was a hard time because
obviously
I then found myself very much on my own.
Okay.
So I was working full time.
Yep.
I would get up, the children would be in nursery for, probably about 7:30.
Yeah.
So it'd be up, children to nursery, I'd go to work, I'd finish work at 5, I'd then come back, sometimes 5:30, get back, get the kids at 6 o'clock, I bring them in, I feed them, I bath them, I put them to bed, and then it's
long
just
day.
like,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
and I couldn't find anyone socially. So socially, how do you find a social circle
Yes.
when
Well, you've got to have the time to fit it in as well. Which,
absolutely?
Yeah, because I
Juggling.
suppose you're meeting many parents at nursery.
Well, I actually found one of my best friends, who's still one of my best friends now,
Right. Okay.
from my group, a lady called Karen, who I absolutely love to death. She actually worked at the nursery.
Amazing.
And
Yeah,
she saw the struggles that I was having.
Yeah.
And she took me under her wing, and she, when we did have, like, when the children were with their dad or anything like that, she would take me out, and she really, I always say she saved my life because she gave me hope.
Yes.
And it's interesting, now she works at M-Spot and she does so well. She's such a hard worker. And there's a little group, I've got 5 girlfriends who are my world, I love completely.
Yeah.
And she always says, why am I part of this group? Because, they're all like Rachel Holiday, the social entrepreneur. I've got my friend Claire, who's like a cost engineer, senior cost engineer. My friend Jane, who's a partner in an accountancy firm and now works as a director in another firm. I've got Sarah Purdom, who's a business owner.
Yeah.
And she's just like, why am I part of this?
So what did she do at M-Sport then?
She was cleaner. She's now just been promoted to kit coordinator.
Okay.
And she's just like, why am I part of this? And I said, it's not about your job. It's
Yeah.
about the person.
Yeah.
You are an amazing person.
Yeah.
And again, so she really, really helped me.
Yeah.
She gave, and she didn't know at the time. She didn't know till quite a bit afterwards that she was so instrumental in my life.
You know what would be kind of interesting, actually, her in that group will have a completely different perspective, but of such value to that group, I suspect, because of her experience and where she is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're in recruitment.
Yep.
And you're employed by this agency?
Yep. So I initially went in with Rulion.
Okay.
And I went in to set them up
They're
a
big.
permanent recruitment division.
Right.
Yeah.
Permanent. Okay.
So they'd only ever done contract here in Cumbria.
Okay.
Which is very much bums on seats.
Yeah. Okay.
And they wanted a permanent division. And like I said before, I kind of more went in and did consultancy for consultants, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I went in and I did set them up a very successful, actually, permanent recruitment division.
Okay.
In their
And
office.
going back to the personal a little bit, you started blogging.
Yeah. But that wasn't when I was there.
Okay.
So I did Rulion. I then got headhunted by a company called Mackenzie Douglas.
Okay.
They were a legal recruiters and they wanted an energy division.
Right. Okay.
So I set them up an energy division.
Got you.
I started to go to Britain's Energy Coast Business Cluster.
Yes.
And I started to make some really good connections.
Yeah.
One guy who sticks out as someone who really influenced me was a guy called Dick Raz. He was a big American character. He used to chew a cigar, but everyone used to respect him. And he was the managing director or CEO of LLWR at the time, the Low Level Waste Repository.
Okay.
And because people saw him talking to me and taking me under his wing and taking me for coffee and giving me advice, they suddenly thought I was someone worth speaking to.
Yep.
So I started to really build a good network. So I decided that people weren't actually doing business with Mackenzie Douglas. They were doing business with me. And that's when I decided to make the decision to set up my own business.
Okay.
So
That's a big step.
Yeah, it was, because I had 2 little girls. So I was on my own,
Yes.
2 little girls. By this time, I'd managed to save enough to put a deposit on a house, because obviously I wasn't going out, wasn't doing much.
Yeah.
And I was saving lots of money. I was very successful in recruitment, so I was earning commission.
Yeah.
So managed to buy a house. And I remember the girls were still at primary school, but I remember I had the conversation with them and I said, look, this is what mummy wants to do. I said, I want to set up my own business, because I always believe that I should have those conversations with them. I said, and this is the impact, okay? So for the next few months...
It might be beans on toast.
Yep. If mum can't put it on the credit card, you can't have it.
Yeah,
okay?
absolutely, yeah.
And because as I saw it, the worst that could happen is I would lose my house.
Yeah.
If I lost my house, then someone would have to house me.
Yeah.
So, and if it didn't turn out well, I'd just get a job.
Yeah.
So, and when I was looking for the job in recruitment, I was applying for everything. So Tesco's, cleaning. I wasn't proud about, and I think that's really important.
Yeah.
I wasn't proud about what I did.
Yes.
I just knew I had to do something.
Yeah.
So, it didn't really, if anything, it was quite an exciting time to do it.
It is.
So I set up New Exec Consulting, and that's when I started to blog. So I started to speak to a lot of people, and people were getting the supply chain. They were getting really frustrated because of the way Sellafield was behaving.
Right.
In what respect?
So
It's difficult to do business with? Or?
Yeah, difficult to do business.
Yeah.
When people did win contracts, there was the delay in awarding contracts. There was SMEs not getting the opportunity. There were the large organisations promising them work and never giving them work. There was like a whole array of that type of stuff.
And you had to pay to pitch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Sellafield weren't opening their doors. You had to pay a commercial business to go and put a stand to pitch, to try and win business.
Okay.
But the people attending weren't even the right people.
Yeah.
And it was bonkers. But historically, if someone ever spoke out about Sellafield, and I saw this happen years prior, they would either lose their job or their company would lose the contract.
Right.
That is how
It was
bad
very
it was.
bit of a
It
closed
was a
shop.
very old boy network.
Yeah.
It was, and then obviously as they moved into more public procurements, that had to change.
Yeah.
But there was still this. So I started to blog about it.
So did you see that as a sort of challenge that you wanted to address?
Yeah,
then?
absolutely.
And the blog was the way in which...
As new exec, Sellafield wasn't my customer.
Yeah.
My customer was the supply chain.
Sure.
And I also, I should have said, joined the management team and then the board of Britain's Central Coast Business Cluster, where I'd kind of become the voice of the SME without needing to.
Yeah.
So when I sat in the boardroom, I think I was one of 2 maybe SMEs around the table, and they would be talking about, let's do it. And I would say, well, what about the SMEs? What about the membership? And I was always the person bringing people back, which is interesting because when I first walked into my very first meeting at the cluster, I felt like I was walking into the staff room and I was like, what am I doing here? How am I sat here? And then after a few meetings,
But it's really interesting. Forgive me, I'm going to step back slightly because of the journey you've been on, you're scared of nothing.
No.
Walking into that environment, and actually, you were in a great position to cross-examine that. The way they were doing business.
Yeah.
So that was
I suppose that's a big part of it, isn't it? That's such a well-organized, large, to a certain extent, bureaucratic organisation. No one does challenge it until someone actually does.
Absolutely.
And then there's the opportunity to make some change.
But the blog wasn't just about challenging negativity.
Yeah.
It was also about, I would share there loads of information. So I would go to all the different events and things that were going on, and I would then share the information in the blog and say, I've heard this is coming up, this procurement's on, you might want to be thinking about doing this procurement, you might want this. And actually it got to a point where loads of people telling me their BDs were just copying and pasting my blog into their reports. So I started to do things like drop random words in like knickers, just to catch them out. Yeah, absolutely. But it wasn't just about, and it was never personal to an individual because that's wrong. I don't want to be unkind. It was this is, and it was always based on, this is what I've heard. It might not be facts, but this is what I've been told. This is what I've heard. And I'd also share all about those opportunities and tell people who they should be connecting with to help. But then what I always used to do at the end is, it can only happen to me. So there would always be a story about something that happened that week. It would normally be something around my knickers showing or, some terrible mishap. But it was just to emotionally connect with the people that were reading my blog.
We've spoken about this on a different episode actually, where that element in business where you really make a point of being yourself, genuine, authentic. And we agreed that, if you choose the other way, which is to try and be something else, you're making it really hard for yourself.
Yeah.
Just be yourself, and it's easy. So it's really interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I used to get lots of people come up to me and, hi, I'd be like, I'm not sure. And I feel like I really know you because I read your blog.
Yeah.
And that was quite nice.
Yeah, it is good.
But it got to a point where I had 6,000 readers.
What you should have said was, "Would you like a signed autograph from Haven?"
Yeah. I should have bought those pictures.
Should have bought it.
But yeah, so I got up to 6,000 readers. I didn't realise that it was Sellafield that was running the statistics because they were monitoring closely.
Yes, keeping an eye.
They did bring in a couple of people that tried to filter what I was saying.
Okay.
I worked with them to a degree, but I wouldn't allow them to not. They couldn't stop me.
Yeah.
They couldn't stop me talking about what I felt, what was going on, what I was hearing.
Yeah.
But I would kind of go to them and get that kind of, all right, well, this is what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And they might say, well, actually, the facts are this, or
Tweak it slightly.
yeah.
So, but at least you had that engagement.
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely, absolutely. So I was writing the blog for a good few years. I was running the business for about 5.5 years. Well, by the time I finished, it was about 5.5 years. But Sellafield brought someone new in, someone called Martin Chown as their supply chain director.
Okay.
And Sellafield called me, actually, their comms team. Oh, our supply chain director's coming to speak at the cluster. Will you come? And I'm like, I've actually got stuff on. And I genuinely did. And they're like, oh, but we'd really like you to meet him. And I thought, all right, I'll change my plans and I'll come.
Yeah.
So I was sitting in the cluster and I heard Martin speak. And he said things like, I no longer want the supply chain to have to pay to meet Sellafield.
Right,
and I was like, oh my God. And he was saying, I want to make working with Sellafield easier. I want to stop delays. And all these things were like, tick, tick. And I sat there, oh my God, I think I love this man. It was like everything that I had been fighting for.
That he probably had read.
Yeah.
I was going to say, was he aware? Was he aware of his?
Sorry.
But all of those things he was saying he was going to address.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, if he genuinely means what he's saying, there's going to be a real change here. So we met afterwards and we sat down and we were having a conversation. And with some people, you just click.
Yeah.
You sit down and you start having a conversation and you just get it.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was on the board of Time to Change West Cumbria. I came off for a little while and now I've gone back on again.
Right.
And they were launching their Calderwood coffee. So Calderwood House is their homeless hostel and they'd started this coffee. And I wanted it to be their coffee van to go onto Yacht and Fuse car park at Sellafield.
Of course, right.
So that was my kind of push to Martin.
Yeah.
So we were having this conversation. We got on really well. And he was asking me, what are the problems? What would you do? And I was like, I need this van. What would you do? And we started.
How did we make it happen?
Yeah, we started having these conversations fairly regularly. We'd bump into each other or we'd arrange for a coffee.
Yeah.
He got the coffee van on Yacht and Fuse for me, which was fantastic. But also, we would often have those conversations where he'd say to me, right, these are my problems. What would you do, Emma-Jayne? And this went on for maybe nearly a year.
Okay.
And then I said to him one day when we were doing it, I was like, well, what you need is me to come in and sort this out for you.
Yeah.
Ha, ha, ha.
Quite flippantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I want you to come in and work for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
So you're still running your own business?
Still running my own business. But by this point, I'd fallen out of love with recruitment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd fallen out of love with recruitment. I was still doing my blog because, that was something I really enjoyed, helping people, having those conversations. I found more and more I was going and giving businesses advice about working with Sellafield rather than my paid for work.
Yeah.
So he offered me a package, which was amazing. So I decided that I would close the business and I would go and work for him. And I went in as head of supply chain development and innovation. And I owned the SME agenda for Sellafield, which is the government SME agenda.
Yes.
And I was responsible for the supply chain and helping the supply chain do business with Sellafield, which was a fantastic opportunity for myself. And I'm so grateful for being given that opportunity.
Yeah.
Because it was something I was so passionate about. It's not often you get to do something that you're super passionate about.
Yeah.
So I recruited a lovely little team. There was 4 of us in all. And we took the SME spend from around about 21-23% up to 30.9%.
Okay.
Wrote the first SME strategy, an SME action plan. I brought in Link with Sellafield, which was a platform that only allows SME businesses to win work.
Okay.
So it gave them that open door. I did directors forums, which were events that had 400 to 500 directors attend. So they could collaborate, they could understand what opportunities there were. I brought our tier 2s in so that they could talk about the opportunities, because quite often that's where people are going to get their work, not directly with Sellafield, but through our partners.
Makes sense.
And it was an amazing time.
Yeah.
But also, Martin would utilise me to do things like his comms, almost like his brand, if you like.
Yeah.
If he had a special project, he wanted a business case team, so I set up the business case team for him. Completely not what I would normally do, but he knew I would get what he says, get shit done.
Yes.
He knew that I would come across a lot of barriers,
Yes.
but I don't allow barriers to stop me.
Yeah.
There's always a way around them, over them, through them.
Yes.
So I was doing a lot of special projects for him as well.
Yeah.
And then when he decided to go for the CEO role, and when he secured that role, I obviously explained and wrote a new position, which was the chief of staff, which I then went to do with him.
Yeah.
And he gave me the wonderful task of culture.
Right.
So as CEO,
It sounds like you've already changed the culture, certainly from a supply chain point
absolutely,
of view.
yeah. So the supply chain, we did some amazing work,
And were you met with a fair bit of resistance in that process then?
with the supply chain.
Yeah.
No, because the supply chain already believed in me from my blog, so
Right,
they knew
okay.
that I was.
I meant from the
honest.
other side, from within Sellafield.
I didn't really need to, because I was
Right.
just doing it anyway. I had some, but yes, I did. Your question, yes, I did come with resistance.
Right.
I came across some absolute pricks.
Yeah.
I came across people that said to me I shouldn't be there. I wasn't trustworthy because they'd seen the blog. They thought I was going to say things.
Yeah.
I had people treating me really badly. Not accepting me onto the lead team because they didn't feel that I should be on the lead team. So I did, but I don't hold that in my head because it doesn't play any purpose.
No, absolutely.
That was experience that made me stronger. It made me realise that if I went into them and said, "Oh, I'd like to do this," and they'd go, "Oh, no." What I did is I went in and said, "This is what I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. This is why, this is what the outcome's going to be. Any objections? No, great." So I learned to twist how I delivered stuff to get my outcome.
Yeah.
So yes, I did come across resistance, but I was so passionate about what I was doing, there was no way it was going to stop me.
Great.
And so one of the things Martin was told when he went to CEO is, you'll never change the culture at Sellafield. And if you tell Martin he'll never do something, it's going to happen.
That goes to the top of the list.
Yeah. So he entrusted me, which was amazing. And he said he wanted a manifesto and he wanted a purpose.
Yeah.
So historically at Sellafield, what we'd always done is people would say, right, we want some new values or we want to change the culture. They'd bring in consultants at a senior level that talked loads of wanky language that no one connected with. They'd work with the exec and the senior leaders to come up with words and things that connected to them.
Just some fluff. Yeah.
And then they'd try and push it down on the workforce.
Yeah.
And the workforce, they're not...
See right through it.
It's not their language.
Yeah.
They're not interested in it.
Yeah.
It doesn't connect with them.
Yeah.
So I was determined that if I was going to do it, I was going to do it differently.
Okay.
So what I did is I spoke to the business, like at all levels of the organisation,
Okay.
to really understand what the current culture was.
Yeah.
And I heard some really sad stories, Historically, Sellafield was not a nice place to work.
Yeah.
People were scared to come out as gay because of all the homophobic comments or fear that there might be as well.
Yeah.
There was people who had a hard time because they had a stammer, and they didn't feel they had a voice because they couldn't have that physical voice there and then, and they weren't given the time, the patience, or the respect to be able to articulate. We had just an all array of stories. But what I did in the workshops was make it really clear to them, this is all stuff that's happened. And do you know what? I'm so sorry that's happened. But we can't change the past.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to reflect on that.
Okay.
And what do we want to see to the future? Let's draw a line. This is what's happened.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's okay, but this is what's happened.
Yeah.
What do we need to see in the future? And that's how the manifesto was created, through their words. We value each other.
Yeah.
We're kind and respectful. We celebrate achievements. We trust and hold to account. And they were all things that they wanted themselves to do, but also wanted to see others do.
Yeah.
And then with them, we worked up the purpose. So this was about listening to the stories, pulling out the keywords. We're creating a clean and safe environment for future generations.
Right.
And through doing that work, it made me start on my own personal purpose discovery,
Okay.
which is actually sessions that I can now do for businesses or for
So,
people as well.
so if we sort of fast forward to now,
Yeah.
then, so that's your
So
current
I did the
business
manifesto.
plan
Yeah,
purpose.
so I did the manifesto. I did the purpose. We put it out through the organisation. I put a great infrastructure of change makers in to help do the project. So all of this stuff was going on for a good 18 months. WANO, the World Association of Nuclear Operations, came in, gave it a strength in their peer audit, which is very unusual to have a strength. So then I saw an opportunity to commercialise.
Right.
Hence why I felt that that was the right time for me to. And it was really strange because I loved working at Sellafield. The opportunities that Sellafield gave me, the qualifications that they gave me were fantastic. I loved working with Martin. I still love speaking with him, but I knew that it was the right time for me. So I cried a bucket when I left because I was like, I don't want to leave. But I knew I wanted to leave.
But it's a brave move, isn't it? I mean, I know. So you've gone from running your own business, which comes with a whole bunch of challenges. We all know about that. You then go into a fairly challenging environment, but a very rewarding one by the sounds of it.
Do you know, I would
secure.
never have dreamt of the salary and the benefits that I was receiving there.
So
like in a million years.
Yeah. So that's quite something to walk away from.
I'm not money driven.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I am not money driven. I just need what I need to survive.
Yeah.
What's important to me is that feeling in your gut when you're doing something that's amazing, that gives you such a sense of achievement. And, so my purpose, going back, I decided to do this personal purpose discovery myself.
Yes.
My purpose is to be the light to help others to shine.
Okay.
And I found that purpose through my stories. Like I said about the story about my nan.
Yeah.
And that's what my business now.
So I was going to ask about that. So how does that sort of manifest itself in what you do with clients now?
Okay. So my business has 4 different, it started off with 3, but through demand, it's now got a 4th strand.
Okay.
So the first is the purpose discovery. So that's helping companies understand why they exist, why anyone should care. That's about looking at the very core. It's about understanding your North Star, where you're working towards. It's giving your people something to get up for in the morning. They emotionally connect to why they come to work. Purpose-driven companies are, they outperform their competitors on the stock markets. They're more resilient. There's loads of facts and figures around purpose-driven companies. So I go in and help companies find their purpose. But I can also do the personal purpose discovery as well, which is on a one-to-one basis, which is about understanding their stories right the way through their life, and you find those golden threads. I use Simon Sinek's method. If you ever come to Simon Sinek, that's the method that I use in that personal purpose discovery. I also do cultural work. So cultural inquiry, go into a company. Quite often, the directors and exec at the table will be going, our culture's fantastic. You see these values on the wall? This is how everyone behaves. Yeah, absolutely is not.
Yeah.
So what I do is I'll go in and do a cultural inquiry to really understand how people are thinking, how people are feeling.
So that's throughout the organisation. That's just not the executive board.
No, not just the exec. It's got to be the people.
Sure.
So it's about understanding how the people feel. Do the people feel the same as the exec think they feel?
Yeah.
What are their challenges? Usually on those sorts of sessions, I'll do a shit list, enable them to get it all out. Because if you don't let people get it out, they drink their own poison.
Yeah. And it's so much easier from an outside perspective going into a business to establish this stuff.
I remember speaking to someone who was like, but in 1983, Bob said this, and I felt like this. It's like, 1983, and they've been drinking that poison for all those years because no one had given the opportunity to get it out.
So do you find that when you're engaging with the core employees, as it were, are they happy to open up about this sort of stuff?
Absolutely, because it's all about creating the right environment.
Right.
So they have to have an environment that they know is completely, and this is what I did at Sellafield as well, because initially people were like, but if we say anything, absolutely not. So you have to create that environment where people know that anything they say is confidential.
Yeah.
Everyone in the room has to understand that if they take that outside, they'll be disciplined.
Yeah.
Because they have to have that safe space where they can be honest. And it's okay that other people don't agree with them. That's their experience. And you have to allow people to have that. Sure. So it is about building that right from the outset, the right environment to enable and empower people to have those conconversations.
So you've been, remind us, you've been running Plain Purpose as your organisation, relatively new, relatively young still.
Yep.
What's the next stage of development? Where are you going next?
So just to carry on with what I do, because then that will feed in.
Yep.
So we've got purpose, culture, also facilitation. Okay. So any sort of facilitation, from facilitating on a one-to-one basis to draw stuff out of someone's head. I used to do that a lot with Martin, helping him get that shit out of his head that doesn't really make any sense, but he knows he's got to do it, but doesn't quite know how it all maps together.
Yeah.
To facilitating up to 500 people. So any sort of, facilitation I can do. I'm an accredited facilitator as well. And then this new part that I wasn't going to do. So I was just going to focus on those areas. But when I came out of Sellafield, obviously people are like, oh, she's just been sitting with the CEO, around the exec, she knows what's going on. There's these procurements coming out. So people have started to pull on me for nuclear consultancy and bid support, bid review and bid writing. And actually, I've been really enjoying it because I'm going as part of teams for organisations.
Yeah.
Right.
So that is the new part of my business.
And that can be a complete minefield, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
The mechanics of all of that process, it can be quite challenging. Yeah.
And I've had a real focus on social value as well. So really understanding the social value, doing more digging into what it actually means, what government are looking for in their procurements and what governments are looking for organisations to deliver. So that nuclear consultancy side's kind of come big, but I think that will for a little time, and then it will, as I get older from Sellafield, it will lessen, and the other stuff will. But whilst it's making me money,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because you see what we used to be referred to as CSR. The language has changed. We now talk about ESG scores and social value and social impact. And I think over the years when I've done lots of tendering work, there's an element of it being a little bit of a tick box exercise. I think we're moving away. And I think we are actually now seeing the value.
Yeah. And that's something that's really important to me. So when I work with organisations on the bid, now I've worked with some lovely organisations. SMEs are my favourite, I've got to be honest. Although I do work with some lovely large organisations. So if any of them are watching, I love them too. But there's something special about an SME business. Yeah. But whenever I'm writing for them, it's always on the proviso that I am not going to write anything that you are not going to deliver. Yes. So if we're going to write this, we are going to do it. Now, I know there are a lot of consultants out there that don't do that, that they just write down on the paper to win the bid. Yeah. I don't believe it. Going back to my values, I don't believe in that.
If you've got to deliver it.
Absolutely.
You're committed.
Because the reason you're doing it is for the betterment of the community in which you live and work. Yeah. So just writing on a piece of paper and then not doing it, that is then just a tick box.
It is. Forgive me, I want to get a little personal for a second.
Yeah.
So your sort of plain purpose, your girls.
Yes.
Yeah. So what would you, obviously you were working as a 11, 12-year-old market stalls and I'm guessing.
Yeah.
They must be in their teens now, I'm guessing.
Oh, they are, yes.
Yeah. Have you got them doing this kind of thing? What are you passing on to them?
They don't see their mum very often. No. Okay, so my eldest, she's 18.
Okay.
She does work in McDonald's.
Okay.
So she started work at 16.
Right.
So yeah.
Good discipline there.
Yeah.
So she knows how to graft.
But she'd been. She doesn't at home though. I bet she's
teenager. Right?
I know. Okay. When they're like, "Oh, she's amazing. She works so hard. She's always sweeping up." Really? So she works really hard there. She's also at college. She wants to be in the police.
Right.
So she's doing a policing college qualification, which she finishes in the next few weeks, and then she's got a place at uni to do policing degree.
Yeah.
Where's she going?
Salford. But she will work while she's doing her degree.
Salford's hardcore.
Yeah, it's great. Honestly, we went to open. I want to go. Have you been to a university lately? The social life looks amazing.
My daughter's just about to graduate. So,
Is she? Has she loved it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, first year for her was first lockdown year, so not so great. But last two have been good.
Yeah. And then my youngest, so she is 16.
Okay.
Had some, nearly 17 in August actually, had some real challenges with Katie.
Okay.
So some people may know, but a couple of years ago she was suffering with her mental health.
Okay.
And she attempted her life, which was really, really hard as a single mum to deal with.
Yes.
The support and help that we got was really poor.
Right.
We were waiting for appointments and so forth. She then went down again. I then got a call from the school to say, you need to get her to hospital. She's having another episode. Okay. And it was a really, really hard time because I have a senior role at Sellafield.
Yeah.
And whilst I like to be really authentic, I also believe in not taking your shit into work.
Yes.
So I would sit all night up with my daughter on suicide watch.
Yeah.
Go to work the next morning. And
pretend everything was fine.
Nobody would know that there was a thing wrong.
Yeah.
I hid it extremely well. And in fact, work was almost like a disguise to the feeling that I was
Yeah,
feeling as a
I
mother.
get it,
And I
get it.
know it's not about my feelings, it's about the feelings of her. But as a mum,
Yeah,
knowing that there was no reason for her to feel like that,
yeah.
there was nothing you didn't know.
There is
how to
no
fix.
control. There is none at
There
all.
is not.
Yeah, and you still feel responsible.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it was absolutely exhausting. And it
Yeah.
was so hard. You know, I'd come home from work and,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't know if I'd find her dead or alive.
Yeah.
You know, I'd go up to her, I'd wake up in the morning and be too scared to get out of bed
Yeah.
because I didn't want to go into her room.
Okay.
And that was what I was like living with on a daily basis, whilst being this not only CEO to chief of staff to the CEO, but also being really, really positive, upbeat, facilitating all these manifesto sessions about how wonderful life is and how positive we can all be.
Yeah.
And it was a really, really hard and challenging time.
Yeah.
And when she went through her other episode, it was so terrible. We went, I don't want to labour it, but we went to the hospital in short. We were there waiting for ages. Someone finally came in and they said to her, this is from CAMS. No, it wasn't the CAMS crisis team. They came in and they said, she said, you know, I'm suicidal. She was actually explaining how she would kill herself. Like she had plans in place.
Right, yes.
Right.
And they turned around to her and said, well, you haven't done it yet, have you? Get home. And I was crying. She was crying. I'm like, I can't
This
take
is
her
the
home.
crisis team.
Yep. It's
Wow.
like, I can't take her home. I cannot cope another night without sleep.
Yeah.
She was going, please keep me in. I feel safe here. I'm not safe at home.
Yeah.
So I set up a campaign called CHICS, Children's Health in Crisis Cumbria Support,
Okay.
along with Rachel Holiday and Emma
Right.
Williamson, some other really inspirational people.
Yes.
And we actually lobbied to get better mental health for children. We
Right.
went to government, we went to the NHS, but we've now wound that down because we've made our points, we've done what
Right.
we needed to do.
Okay.
But I'm telling you this because Katie, she actually came out as trans, would like to identify as a boy,
Right.
but felt that in Cumbria she perhaps couldn't do that
Yeah.
because she'd been to Cockermouth School
Right.
and then she moved to UTC, so everyone knew her.
Right.
So she decided that her dad was still living down in the southwest in Chepstow now.
Right.
So she's decided to move down there to do her A-levels.
Right.
So it was really hard for me having her on my own
Yes.
for 8 years.
Oh,
Having gone through that really bad period with her, having brought her through and
Yeah.
seen her flourish, and then her going, I'm going down there now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as a mother,
Yeah.
you have to go,
You got to let them. do
that's
their
your
thing.
choice.
Yeah. No.
And,
Absolutely.
you know, she's
And-
happy. And
So a dad is obviously being responsible for her, and okay, you don't have to comment on that.
comment.
Yeah. No, but I mean,
we'll fuss over that
so-
bit.
She's through the worst of that now.
but
She's
she's
through
still
she herself. And when we finally got into CAMS, they
Right.
were brilliant.
okay.
She had cognitive behavioural therapy.
Right.
She was diagnosed with depression,
Yeah.
and and for her, what she found so hard was she's a very lateral thinker. So, and there was no reason why she was feeling the way she was feeling, and she couldn't cope with the why am I? So
Why do I feel this way?
there'd nothing that's happened.
No
that
trigger
should-
or anything.
No.
No.
So what she learned through that was that it was depression. So she got a label, so that helped.
Yeah.
But also she learned what her triggers were, and when it's coming on, now she knows, and she knows what to do.
Okay.
So she's managing it so well. And
Forgive me.
such
I
a
mean,
better person.
for audience, you're calling her she still.
And I shouldn't.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, as a
But-
mother, I kind of
yeah.
understand, but at the same time, you need to
Yeah.
recognise.
So when I'm with
yes,
Kay,
yes,
I will refer to him, he, him,
Understood.
his,
okay,
as much as I can.
yeah,
But we are on a journey.
yeah, absolutely.
And she kind of halves and halves. So sometimes
Okay.
she'll be she and her and
Right.
Katie
Okay,
because
so there's still,
in
Still.
certain
Okay.
circles, school,
Understood.
things like that, it's all
Yeah,
a bit tricky.
yeah,
But then as much as possible, she wants to be Caleb.
yeah.
I can't quite get the whole Caleb. So we do K because it's half between Katie, half between Caleb. And
Okay,
it,
understood.
you know,
Yeah,
but
That's part of the journey, isn't it? You've got to work
yeah. I
out.
know. Let's not
Yeah.
go on
How it
that.
all
no,
works,
but
yeah.
it's, as a parent, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's a really hard thing to go through
course,
because
yeah.
you're almost mourning your little girl.
Yeah,
And it's like, how do I balance that? And I do still, when she's not here, refer to her as her,
Yeah.
she, and a girl. But then for this story, she was.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now I will do my best to do he, him, his. But it's
Right.
really hard as a
yeah,
parent
must be.
to kind
Must
of
be. Yeah.
address that, go through
Yeah,
that.
of
You
course.
kind of think, did I do something wrong? But of course, there's nothing wrong with being trans.
No.
But as a parent, you know, you kind of in your head, you have this, and I'm going to say this, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, like this normal, what you would perceive as normal. You think you're going to have a little girl, she's going to get married, you're going to go and do the wedding dresses, they're going to have kids.
Yeah.
So to suddenly have someone that's trans, yes, that's normal, but it's just a different normal.
Absolutely.
Different to what your
And
plan
I
was.
suppose there's anyone out
different
there.
to what you expected.
Exactly. No one's going to expect that or see it coming until it's in
Absolutely.
front of them. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you think, are people going to judge me?
Yeah.
And that was the same when she was going through her suicidal and mental health. Are people going to judge me? Are they going to think I'm a really shit mum?
Yeah.
And then you start questioning, am I a shit mum because I've done my career and I brought them up on my own? What didn't I do? And of course, it's not. Why are we so important that we think it's about ourselves? Because it's not.
No.
I think
But
that is part
it's
of being a
interesting,
parent,
isn't
isn't
it?
it? That,
Yeah.
you know, everything that happens in and around your kid's life is connected to you, and
Absolutely.
you do take a lot of it
Yeah.
on.
Yeah,
Which,
you do.
you know, like you say,
No, absolutely, because it's not about you, it's about them.
Yeah.
And they have to live their lives, and as long as they're happy, I'm behind them 100%.
Cool. Yeah.
Tremendous.
Okay. Good.
So so now plain purpose.
Yes.
Life is good. Loving
Yes.
it.
Good.
Been trading since November.
Yes.
Just secured
Very early.
a contract in Saudi Arabia, which I am delighted with.
Okay.
I've never had international experience with Katie, as I mentioned, being down south,
Yeah.
and Madeline going off to university.
Yeah.
Got a little bit more time. So how did that come about? A trip to Saudi or?
Well, no, network. Everything's about network.
Yeah.
It's all about who you know.
Yeah.
I happened to be connected with someone who was a managing director in Saudi. I reached out. He liked what I said. I've now got this opportunity to go out there.
I mean, the opportunities that could lead to.
Absolutely.
Tremendous.
Really
Yeah.
so it's a really nice piece of work because I'm writing a workshop to help connect. So they've already got a purpose, so they don't need me to write a purpose, but they want me to connect their workforce to the purpose and the Saudi Vision 2030 and how it all links in. And doing a workshop, and then I'll go out and deliver that workshop to 4 different areas of Saudi.
Cool.
So it'll be amazing. Really,
Awesome.
really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we come to how people hook up with you
Yep.
and how they get in touch,
Yep.
we have a little thing on the show where we want to get a little anecdote from you.
Okay.
So I've been thinking about this, and of all the time that you spent in recruitment, you know, finding the right people,
Yep.
placing in the right position, is there one thing where you've placed someone and they've gone on to be amazingly brilliant, or you've ballsed up completely and a complete howler? Is there something that jumps out where you think, oh yeah, I'm glad I did that, or I wish I hadn't?
Not really. I mean, everyone I placed was amazing.
Right.
Because I only worked with amazing people.
Good answer.
But what I would say is,
Yeah.
the only time things bite me on my bum is when I don't trust my gut feel.
Okay.
So I would interview someone and I'd go, yeah, they seem really good, but...
Not feeling it.
And every time I didn't trust it,
Yeah.
something would come back to me. I think probably the worst one, this was years ago, when I very first kind of set out in recruitment, and I did industrial recruitment, which is like, you know, fast paced. This guy came into the office. He was desperate for a job. His girlfriend was pregnant. He was only a young lad. And we got like I think it was like a catering contract in. Goodness knows how we got that, but we got this catering contract in. And I was like, right, do you know what? I'm going to give you a chance. Yeah. And I said, you need to be here at this time. They'll pick you up. And he didn't go.
Yeah.
And then I
Which
got
comes
hold
back
of
on
him
you.
and he went, I'm really sorry. My girlfriend was ill. I'll definitely be there tomorrow. I was like, do you know what? I'll give you the benefit of doubt. Thank you. And he didn't come again. And I was so good. And it made me kind of lost I really believed in him.
Yeah.
And now I'm always a little bit, is people what they're saying, really what they're saying. But for me, trust your gut.
Yeah.
Trust your gut.
Good advice.
And my main thing that I always say is, and it is a diversity saying, diversity. I love diversity, the dance crew.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Dream, believe, achieve. And I believe that. If you can dream it and you believe it, you will achieve it. And I genuinely believe that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So for those in our audience that want to find out a little bit more about you and how to get in touch, how do people hit you up? Where can they find you?
I would probably say LinkedIn is a really
Okay.
good place. Emma-Jayne Gooch on LinkedIn. Email address ejg@plainpurpose.co.uk or go onto the website.
And we'll put those links
Thank
in
you
the
so very
description.
much.
Brilliant.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks for joining us, Emma-Jayne. It's been great.
That's been great.
Thank you.
So there you have it. That's been The Liquid Show. We shall look forward to seeing you in the next one. And if you like, subscribe and share, that does the show a great favour and we can get more guests like Emma-Jayne. Thanks once again.
Thank you.
A Liquid Studios production.